A young woman came to Wyoming for one summer. Then the cowboy gave her a reason to stay. Lydia Hart had been in Wyoming less than a morning when the wind taught her that a loose porch board could sound like a gunshot. It cracked up under her boot, slapped back down, and sent dust jumping from the gray planks of Painted Table Ranch. She stood still with the hammer in her right hand, and her travel skirt caught around one knee, listening to the empty house breathe behind her. The place had been her aunt's, though Lydia had not seen Aunt Me in 13 years. It sat in a shallow bowl of grassland east of the Medicine Bow Road, with red bluffs beyond the creek and a line of cottonwoods silvering in the July heat. The ranch house was low, sunburned, and stubborn. The barn leaned a little. The pump complained before it gave water. The south fence looked as if 3 winters and every passing cow had agreed to test it. Lydia had come from St. Louis with 2 trunks, 1 valise, and a letter from her uncle saying 1 summer would be plenty. 1 summer to sort the house. 1 summer to sell the land. 1 summer to breathe high, dry air before she returned in September, and did the sensible thing Everett Sloane had been waiting 2 years for her to do. Marry him. As if a woman could be sent west for air, measured for marriage, and shipped home before she had learned what her own voice sounded like in open country. The board cracked again. Lydia set her jaw, crouched, and drove the nail as hard as she could. The nail bent. She stared at it. You are supposed to turn the old nail out first. The voice came from the yard, calm enough to make her more irritated than startled. Lydia rose with the hammer still in her hand. A cowboy sat a bay horse near the gate. He was not young, not old, somewhere in his early 30s, with sun-browned skin, a dark hat pulled low, and a clean white scar running from the corner of his left wrist into his cuff. His right hand held the reins loosely. His left rested against the saddle horn as if he did not trust it with much. He looked at the split board, then at her bent nail. He did not smile. That helped. I know that now, Lydia said. Most folks do after the first bent one. Are you most folks? No, ma'am. I am usually the fellow who bends 3 before he admits the board has an opinion. The answer surprised a laugh out of her, small and quick. He swung down with care. When his boots touched dirt, the bay horse shifted but did not pull away. The cowboy came only as far as the porch steps and stopped there, hat in hand. Cole Wren, he said, I ride for Rockingham North Line. Your aunt used to let our hands water here when the creek ran thin. Lydia Hart. I know. Town has been saying Miss Hart from St. Louis arrived to sell Painted Table before the grass goes brown. Lydia's fingers tightened around the hammer. Town is quick. Town is bored. Did town send you to see if the house was still standing? No. Cole looked past her at the broken porch rail, the open kitchen door, and the weeds growing through the stone path. Smoke from your stove drew me. Thought maybe Klein had sent men in already. Who is Klein? Everett Sloane's measuring man. The name landed harder than the porch board had. Lydia had known Everett was efficient. Efficiency was one of the words her uncle used when praising him. She had not known his efficiency had ridden ahead of her into Wyoming. Mr. Sloane has no men in this house, she said. Cole heard the edge in it. His gaze came back to her face. Then I am glad I was wrong. The wind lifted a loose strand of Lydia's hair and blew it across her mouth. She tucked it back with the side of the hammer. Do you know how to turn out old nails, Mr. Wren? Yes, ma'am. Then if you are not here to measure anything for Mr. Sloane, you may show me. Something changed in his expression, not amusement exactly. Respect, perhaps, or the beginning of it. He stepped onto the porch only after she moved aside, knelt by the board, and held out his right hand. May I? Lydia gave him the hammer. He used the claw to lift the bent nail, then worked it free with patient pressure. His left hand stayed mostly still, bracing the board with 2 fingers. Lydia saw how the scar had stiffened the tendons there, how he did twice the work with half the grip and never once made a show of it. New nail goes in at a slant, he said. Old wood needs persuasion, not a fight. That seems like advice for more than wood. Out here it usually is. He gave the hammer back. She set a fresh nail and struck it. The first blow went clean, the second sank it, the third fixed the board flat. Cole nodded once. There. Lydia stood over the board, as if she had built the whole porch. For the first time since the train had left her at Laramie, and the stage had carried her into this wide, bright emptiness, she felt the ground answer her weight. From the road came the rattle of wheels. A narrow wagon rolled up beyond the gate, and a man in a linen duster climbed down with a notebook in his hand. He was small, sharp-chinned, and already sweating. He looked first at Cole, then at Lydia, then at the hammer in Lydia's hand as if it had behaved improperly. "Miss Hart," he called, "Mr. Sloane asked me to begin the room inventory." Lydia did not move. "And you are?" "Mr. Klein, I wrote you in care of your uncle." "I received no letter from you." Klein's mouth tightened. "No matter. We have a great deal to do before September. The south rooms will do for guest storage if the walls hold. Mr. Sloane has hopes for this place once the transfer is arranged." He stepped toward the porch, as if the answer had already been given somewhere else by men who had never stood in the yard. Cole's face went still. Lydia looked down at the nail she had driven herself. Then she looked at Klein. "The transfer is not arranged." Klein blinked. "I beg pardon." "You may beg it from the road. No room in this house will be inventoried today." "Miss Hart, Mr. Sloane said you understood the plan." "I understand that men who say plan often mean decision." Klein opened his notebook as though paper might give him courage. "Your uncle gave assurance." "My uncle does not own this porch." The words came out before Lydia had weighed them. Once spoken, they stood in the yard like fence posts. Klein's eyes flicked to Cole. "This is a private matter." Cole reached for his horse's rein. "It seems to be Miss Hart's private matter." Klein flushed. "Mr. Wren, rocking leases from men who do business with Mr. Sloane. You may want to remember that." Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lydia stepped down from the porch, the hammer still in her hand. "Mr. Klein, you can tell Mr. Sloane Painted Table is not taking storage today, and it is not taking orders through you. If he wants to speak of my aunt's ranch, he may speak to me." "He will be here in a week." "Then he has a week to practice." Klein looked at the hammer again, as if it offended him more than her words. Then he wrote one hard mark in his book, the kind meant to travel back as accusation. Klein stared at her as if trying to decide whether women from St. Louis were allowed to speak that way in Wyoming. Then he snapped his notebook shut and climbed back into the wagon. The wheels rolled away in dust. Lydia watched until the wagon turned past the cottonwoods. Only then did her hand begin to shake. Cole saw it. He pretended not to. "You drove that nail straight," he said. Lydia let out a breath. "I think I drove a different one crooked." "Crooked nails still hold sometimes." She turned toward him. "Does everyone here know my business?" "No, only the parts men spoke before you arrived." "That is worse." "Usually." For a moment they stood with the empty ranch behind her and the bright road ahead. Lydia could feel the heat pressing through her sleeves. She could also feel, with a clarity that unsettled her, that the cowboy beside her had not moved to take the hammer from her hand when trouble came. He had let her answer. If you enjoy clean Wild West romances, where a woman gets to choose her own road, subscribe and stay with us for more frontier stories like this one. By noon, Lydia had learned 3 things about Painted Table. The pump gave water if she worked the handle slowly. The kitchen stove smoked if the left damper stayed open. And Aunt Mee had kept every receipt, seed packet, church notice, and feed bill she had ever touched, tied in neat bundles with blue thread and stacked in the pantry as if paper could keep loneliness company. Lydia stood among those bundles with dust on her face, reading the letter Everett had sent to the ranch before she arrived. "My dear Lydia, your uncle assures me that the summer air will do you good, but I trust you will not let sentiment delay practical decisions. Klein will prepare the first inventory. The guest company out of Omaha is interested, but only if title and buildings are cleared by September. I have taken the liberty of reserving your return passage for the first week of that month. Your uncle has also approved our announcement for the fall. It is time for us both to stop waiting. Yours, Everett. At the bottom, in Everett's firm hand, was a postscript. Do not trouble yourself with repairs. It will only make leaving harder. Lydia read that line twice. Then she folded the letter, set it on the pantry shelf, and went outside to repair the pump leather. She had never repaired pump leather in her life. By late afternoon, she had scraped 2 knuckles, dropped the wrench into the mud twice, and ruined the cuffs of a blouse her aunt in St. Louis had called perfectly suitable for summer travel. She had also coaxed the pump into a steadier stream. 2 riders came down from the north road near sunset, one leading a lame horse. They stopped at the gate with the wary look of men who had been told a place was no longer friendly. "Ma'am," one called, "beg pardon, we used to water here, heard it might be closed." Lydia wiped her hands on her apron. "It is not closed." The younger rider looked toward the house. Mr. Sloane's man said the new owner did not want range traffic. "The new owner is speaking to you." Both men removed their hats. The older one swallowed a smile. "Then may we water the bay? He's come up tender." "You may." They watered the horse, and Lydia brought out a tin of cold biscuits because she had made too many, and because their eyes followed the kitchen door with the hunger of men who had expected refusal. Cole arrived while they were eating by the pump. He did not ask why she had opened the yard. He only looked at the fixed pump leather, the wet mud, and the biscuits in the rider's hands. "You fixed it." "Badly." "Water is not judging." The younger rider laughed. Lydia did too. Cole stepped aside while the men led the lame horse back to the road. He waited until they were gone before he spoke again. "You keep feeding riders, you will be out of flour by Saturday." "Then I will buy more." "On what account?" She heard the warning beneath the simple question. "Mind." Cole's eyes moved to the road Klein had taken. "Store may say different." "Then I will say different back." "I expect you will." Lydia picked up the empty biscuit tin. "Is that disapproval?" "No." "What is it?" Trying not to admire too much too soon. The words were quiet. They did not swagger. They did not push. They simply stood between them. Lydia felt heat rise in her face and blamed the sun, though it was already low. "Too soon for what?" Cole took his hat off, turned it in his right hand, and looked toward the red bluffs. "For a woman who says she is here for one summer." The wind moved through the cottonwoods. Lydia heard the pump drip once, twice, 3 times. "I did not say it," she answered. "Everyone else did." Cole looked back at her then. "That makes a difference." The next morning she went to town. Painted Table's wagon had 1 good wheel, 1 tolerable wheel, and 2 wheels that complained like old men. Lydia drove slowly, sitting high on the worn board seat with a list in her pocket and the empty flour sack beside her. Medicine Bow Crossing was not much more than a supply street, a livery, a church, a blacksmith shed, and a telegraph office attached to the depot. But after 2 days alone at Painted Table, it felt crowded. The storekeeper, Mr. Packer, was a broad man with narrow eyes. He watched Lydia come in as if she were a weather change he did not trust. "Miss Hart," he said, "welcome." "Thank you. I need flour, nails, pump leather if you have it, lamp oil, and coffee." He folded his hands on the counter. "Cash or account?" "Account, Painted Table." Packer looked down at a ledger already open. Mr. Sloane instructed that no new charges be made against Painted Table until sale transfer. Lydia had expected resistance. Expecting it did not make it smaller. "Mr. Sloane does not own Painted Table." "No, ma'am, but he has put down a deposit toward improvements, and folks understand the direction of things." "Folks seem to understand a great many things I have not said." From near the door came the soft creak of boot leather. Cole had entered without her hearing him. He held a small folded paper and a saddle buckle. Packer straightened. "Morning, Cole." Cole set the buckle on the counter. "Cancel that order." "Your saddle repair." It can wait. Packer looked from Cole to Lydia. Put Miss Hart's nails and flour against this. Lydia turned sharply. No. Cole did not look at her. I owe painted table water. Water is not flour. Out here it comes close. Packer shifted, uncomfortable now that the transaction had a witness and a cost. Lydia stepped closer to the counter. Mr. Packer, I appreciate Mr. Wren's kindness, but you will write this account in my name. Lydia Hart, painted table. If you refuse, I will buy what cash allows today and send payment for the rest from the first money I earn here. Earn, Packer said. Yes. Doing what? It was a fair question and an insulting one. Lydia glanced out through the store window. Across the street, a woman struggled with 2 crates beside a buckboard while a boy tried to keep a sack from splitting. Farther down, the church fence sagged. A teamster's shirt had torn from shoulder to cuff. She looked back at Packer. Mending, cooking, tallying, washing, writing letters for men whose hands are too cracked to hold a pen. Whatever a summer woman can do before September. Cole's eyes changed at that. He did not smile. He looked as if she had just said something brave and dangerous. Packer cleared his throat. Mr. Sloan may not like it. Mr. Sloan may open his own account. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Packer turned the ledger around, dipped his pen, and wrote Lydia Hart in fresh ink. It was a small thing, ink on paper, but Lydia felt the mark all the way through her. Outside, Cole carried the flour sack to her wagon. He set it down as if it were breakable. You should have let me cover it, he said. Because I am poor. Because Packer is a coward. Then he needed practice being brave. Cole rested his right hand on the wagon side. You keep saying things like that, Miss Hart, and Wyoming will take you seriously. Is that a warning? No, he looked at the street, then back at her. A hope I am trying to keep quiet. She should have answered lightly. She should have remembered Everett's letter, her uncle's debts, the return passage already reserved. Instead, she looked at Cole Wren's scarred hand resting near the flour and wondered what kind of man could make hope sound like restraint. On the 5th day, Lydia found Aunt Me's old blue work apron behind the pantry door. It was faded, patched twice at the waist, and too large through the shoulders. Lydia tied it over her dress anyway. By then she had stopped caring what her travel clothes looked like. Wyoming had put dust in every hem she owned. She repaired the church fence in the morning for 50 cents and a dozen eggs. She wrote a letter for a sheepherder who wanted to tell his sister in Iowa that he was not dead. She mended 3 shirts for rocking M. Hands, who pretended not to stare at the St. Louis woman sewing on the porch with a tin of nails beside her. By evening, her fingers hurt in 6 places. Her heart hurt in one. It began when she found Aunt Me's name carved under the kitchen table. Me Hart, 1872. Beside it, smaller, were 3 other names Lydia did not know. Men, perhaps, hired girls, strays, people who had eaten at that table and felt known enough to leave a mark. Lydia ran her thumb over the old cuts in the wood. She had lived most of her life in rooms where marks were polished out before anyone saw them. Cole found her there when he brought back the empty biscuit tin. He stopped in the doorway, saw her under the table, and leaned one shoulder against the frame. Lose something. Only my dignity. That usually turns up after supper. She slid out, laughing despite herself, and showed him the names. Cole crouched, careful of his hand, his face softened. Your aunt fed half the North Road. Men carved their names because she would not let them pay twice. What does that mean? If they tried to pay for supper, she made them fix something. If they fixed something, she fed them. If they tried to thank her, she told them to come back useful. Lydia looked around the kitchen. The walls needed washing. The stove smoked. The pantry shelves held more dust than food. It must have been a fine place once. It was a living place, Cole said it quietly. Fine is for hotels. The word hotels reminded her of Everett. Mr. Sloan wants to turn it into a resort stop. So I heard. Would that be so terrible? Cole did not answer quickly. She liked that about him. Everett answered before a question was finished, as if speed proved sense. Not terrible for everyone, Cole said at last. Tourists need beds, investors need profit, town needs money, but a place can make money and still stop being itself. And what is painted table? He looked at the carved names. A door that used to open. Lydia did not speak. Cole stood, but it is your door. The sentence held no pressure, that made it heavier. From beyond the yard came the cry of a hawk. Lydia turned toward the window and saw the prairie bright with late sun, the grass moving in long ribbons. She had expected Wyoming to feel empty. Instead, it felt watchful, as if waiting to learn whether she was passing through or paying attention. "You said Aunt Me let Rockingham water here," she said. "Yes." "Why did she?" Cole flexed his scarred hand once, then stilled it. "Because I came through here one August with a burned hand, a dead horse, and pride enough to kill me. She watered me too." Lydia turned from the window. "Burned? Range fire 5 years back. That is how your hand was hurt." "Yes." "Did she nurse you?" "She ordered me to sit down and eat beans. Same thing the way she did it." Lydia smiled, but his face remained serious. "She saved my job," he said. "Rockingham would have replaced me if I had vanished for a week. She sent word north that any outfit foolish enough to throw away a hand over a burned hand did not deserve offense. My boss rode down himself." "And kept you?" "After your aunt made him fix the barn latch." Lydia laughed softly. Cole's gaze moved over the kitchen again. "I owe this place more than water. Is that why you are helping me?" "Partly." "What is the other part?" He looked at her then fully, and the air between them seemed to draw tight. "The other part is not mine to spend." She understood him, not the whole of him, but enough to feel the care in what he did not say. He would not make his admiration another claim on her. That night Lydia wrote to Everett. "Mr. Sloane, I have received your letter. I will not discuss sale transfer through Mr. Klein. Painted table remains under my authority until I decide otherwise. Do not announce a wedding date for me. I have not accepted one. Lydia Hart." She sanded the ink dry, folded the paper, and set it by the lamp. Then, after a long hesitation, she took Everett's return passage envelope and put it unopened in the table drawer. By the second week of July, the ranch began to sound different. The pump handle thumped in the mornings. Chicken's Aunt Me's neighbor had sold cheap scratched under the lilacs. Riders called at the gate instead of slipping past. A widow named Mrs. Bell brought laundry and stayed to show Lydia how to bank the stove against wind. A blacksmith's wife asked if Lydia could write a letter to a son in Cheyenne and paid with onions. Painted table did not become prosperous, it became awake. Cole came most evenings after Rockingham work, never before chores were done and never in a way that made people talk low. If Lydia was on the porch, he stayed in the yard. If she was in the barn, he kept the door wide. If they worked side by side, he gave instruction only when asked, except once when she nearly set a wedge backward and he said, "That one bites." With such alarm she laughed for an hour. He brought no flowers, he made no speeches. He repaired the south fence with her until his bad hand trembled, and he hid it by tightening a cinch that did not need tightening. Lydia saw she did not shame him by saying so. One evening they stood on the ridge above Painted Table, looking down at the ranch. The house roof caught the sunset. The barn cast a long purple shadow. Beyond the creek, the grass ran dry and gold toward Everett's new resort road, where teams had been hauling lumber all week. "That lane should stay clear," Cole said. "For resort wagons." "For fire." He pointed with his right hand. "If lightning catches the ridge, wind will push flame down through that draw. Stock needs a way out, men too." "Can Painted Table stop it?" "No place stops fire alone, but your meadow is low and green near the spring. Open that fence and animals can gather. Keep the lane open and men can cut ahead of it." Lydia looked toward Everett's road. "His wagons are blocking it." "Yes." "Have you told him?" "Klein." "And?" "Klein said resort lumber matters more than old range habits." Lydia hugged her elbows, though the evening was warm. What happens if there is a fire? Cole watched the ridge. People find out who left a gate open. The word stayed with her. Everett arrived 3 days later in a polished black carriage that looked offended by the road. He stepped down in a gray traveling suit, brushed dust from his sleeve, and smiled as though all trouble had been caused by distance and would now end because he had arrived. He was 36, handsome in a correct way, with a trimmed mustache and pale gloves. In St. Louis, women had called him dependable. Lydia had called him kind because she had mistaken steady attention for tenderness. He kissed the air near her cheek before she could step back. "Lydia, you look transformed." She was wearing Aunt Me's blue apron over a brown work dress. Her hair was pinned badly. Her left thumb was wrapped in cloth. "Wyoming is not gentle on cuffs," she said. Everett glanced at Cole, who stood near the pump with a coil of rope. "Mr. Wren, is it?" Cole touched his hat. "Sloan." Everett's smile thinned at the absence of Mr. "I appreciate your neighborly concern, but Miss Hart's affairs are now in hand." Lydia felt Cole withdraw, not in fear but in discipline. He looked at her, waiting. She hated that she needed the moment to gather herself. Everett noticed. He mistook it for victory. "Lydia, your uncle has written. He worries this place is wearing on you. I agree. You have had your adventure. Klein tells me you have been taking in odd work." "Useful work. You do not need to mend shirts for strangers." "They were not strangers after I mended them." Everett gave a small laugh, meant to forgive her foolishness. "That is charming, but we must be practical. The Omaha guests are prepared to inspect in August. Once they see the site, the price will hold. I have arranged for your return passage and drafted a tasteful announcement for September." He took a folded paper from his coat. The paper was not only an announcement, it was a printed fact waiting for her silence. Lydia did not accept it. "I told you not to announce a wedding date. You told me in a heated letter written from an isolated ranch. I wrote it from my kitchen." "A kitchen you mean to leave?" Cole's hand closed around the rope. Everett saw the movement and turned his smile on him. "Mr. Wren, I understand Rocking M's lease renewal crosses my associate's desk next month. I would hate for friendly trespass to be misunderstood." Cole's face did not change, but Lydia saw the blow land. She stepped between them. "Cole is here at my invitation." "Cole," Everett repeated. There it was, not rage, worse, ownership. Lydia lifted her chin. "Mr. Wren helped repair the south fence." "Then pay him and be done." Cole took one step back. "I will settle with Miss Hart when she asks it." "You will settle now." Everett drew bills from his pocket and held them out. Cole looked at the money, then he looked at Lydia. "No." Everett's brows rose. "No. No. You refuse payment." "I refuse yours." The bills stayed in Everett's gloved hand, bright and useless. In St. Louis, money had always ended arguments. In Lydia's yard, it only showed what kind of argument he thought this was. For the first time, Everett's temper showed through the polish. "Pride is expensive in this country, Mr. Wren." Cole put on his hat. "So is thinking everything is for sale." Silence spread across the yard. Lydia wanted to say something strong. Instead, she felt the old habit of peacekeeping rise in her throat. Smooth it, explain it, keep the men from hardening. Then she looked at painted table's open door. A door that used to open. "Everett," she said, "you may stay in town. You may speak to me tomorrow about an offer for the ranch. You may not announce a marriage, threaten my neighbors, or pay men to stop helping me." His eyes narrowed. "You have been here 2 weeks. Long enough. You think dust and a few cowhands make a life." "No." She glanced once at Cole, then away. "But I am beginning to think a life is supposed to have my voice in it." Everett folded the bills slowly. "You are tired. We will speak when you are yourself." "This is myself." He did not believe her. That was the strangest wound of all. Everett could see her standing in her own yard, wearing her own aunt's apron, holding the authority he claimed to admire, and still think the real Lydia was the quieter woman he had left behind. He returned to his carriage. As it rolled toward town, Cole walked to his horse. "You do not have to leave," Lydia said. "I know." "Then why are you saddling?" "Because if I stay angry, I may make your choice harder." She came down the porch steps. "He threatened you." "Yes. Because of me." "No," Cole's voice sharpened just enough to stop her. "Because of him." The difference mattered. It loosened something in her shoulders. Cole mounted, then looked down at her. "If you need me, send word." "And if I want you?" The question escaped before modesty caught it. Cole went very still. For a second, the whole ranch seemed to listen. "Then send word twice," he said. He rode away before either of them could turn that into more than it was safe to be. The hired hands quit the next morning. There were only two of them, brothers named Joss and Will Danner, who had agreed to help Lydia repair the south fence through July. They came at breakfast with hats in hand and shame on their faces. "Mr. Sloan offered full wages through August," Joss said. "At the resort road," Will added. Lydia stood by the stove with flour on her sleeve. "Did he offer more than full wages?" The brothers looked at each other. "Yes, ma'am," Joss admitted. "Then take it." Will blinked. "You ain't angry." "I am not pleased, but I will not ask a working man to refuse wages he needs." Joss looked relieved until she added, "I will ask whether Mr. Sloan told you to leave before finishing the south fence." Neither answered. That was answer enough. After they left, Lydia took the fence pliers from the mudroom and walked south. Cole found her 2 hours later trying to stretch wire alone with a fence stretcher she had set wrong. Sweat ran down her temples. Her palms burned. The wire had snapped once already and whipped a red line across her sleeve. "Stop," he said. She did not. "Lydia." It was the first time he had used her name without miss. She stopped then, more because of the sound than the command. Cole dismounted and came through the grass. "You cannot pull that line alone." "I can learn." Learning and bleeding are kin, but they do not have to be twins. "Do not make me laugh, I am furious." "I can see that." "They left." "I heard." "He bought them away." "Yes." "He thinks if this place grows impossible, I will thank him for rescuing me from it." Cole picked up the loose wire with his gloved right hand. "Will you?" She looked at him as if he had struck flint. "No." "Then hand me the stretcher." They worked until the sun stood high and mean. Cole showed her how to brace the tool with her hip. Lydia learned how to tighten wire in stages so it would not lash back. She learned that anger could carry a body for an hour and then drop it hard. She learned Cole hummed under his breath when pain caught his hand, one low note, then silence. At noon, she made him stop in the shade of the wagon. "Your hand is shaking." "It does that." "Does it hurt?" "It has opinions." "Cole." He looked at her. "Yes." The honesty undid her more than any complaint would have. She took a strip of clean cloth from her pocket. "Let me wrap it." He hesitated. "I am not helpless." "Neither am I, yet you corrected my fence stretcher." That won the ghost of a smile. He sat on the wagon tongue and held out his left hand. Lydia unwrapped the old bandage. The skin across his palm was tight and shiny, the scar deep near the thumb. She wrapped fresh cloth gently, aware of each breath he took. This was not the flirtation she had known in parlors. No fan, no dance card, no careful compliment. It was dust, sweat, pain, and trust laid bare in the harsh noon light. "Aunt Me would scold you for working at this hard," she said. "Your aunt scolded professionally." "So I hear." "She would scold you too." "For what?" "Thinking you have to earn the right to stand on land that is already yours." Lydia tied the cloth and let her fingers rest 1 second too long. "It does not feel mine yet." Cole's voice lowered. What would make it feel so? She looked across the dry grass to the broken line of fence. If I knew I was not only repairing it for another man to profit from. Then do not. You say that as if wanting is enough. No, he flexed his wrapped hand. Wanting is not enough, but it is where a person stops lying. The words stayed with her all afternoon. By the end of the day, they had repaired less than half the fence. Lydia's shoulders ached. Her supper was burned beans and coffee. Cole ate both without complaint. Afterward, they sat on opposite sides of the kitchen table. The return passage envelope lay in the drawer between them as if it could breathe through wood. If I sell, Lydia said, my uncle's debts are covered. Everett says the price will make everyone comfortable. Including you. She rubbed at a blister on her palm. Comfortable is a word people use when they do not want to ask if you are glad. Cole looked into his cup. And would marrying him make you comfortable? The question was improper, the care in it was not. It would make me settled, she said. That is not what I asked. She looked at him across the lamplight. No. Cole shut his eyes briefly, as if the answer hurt and relieved him at once. Then I hope you find another way. You do not say you are the way. His eyes opened. I will not be another man standing at your gate with a plan for your life. The kitchen grew very quiet. Outside, the wind moved through the cottonwoods. Somewhere in the barn, a horse stamped. Lydia thought of Everett's polished carriage, his folded announcement, the way he had said, when you are yourself, as if she were a possession temporarily misplaced. Then she thought of Cole stopping at the porch steps, asking before taking the hammer, refusing to turn his hope into a debt. That may be the first thing about you that frightened me, she said. What is? That you make room. He did not move, neither did she. The lamp flickered. Cole rose first. I should go. She wanted to ask him to stay, not in a way that would be safe, and because of that she did not. At the door, he turned back. Lock up after me. The latch barely catches. Then set the chair under it until I fix it tomorrow. You are coming tomorrow. If you want. She smiled a little. That was once. He looked puzzled. You said if I wanted you, I should send word twice. Cole's face changed. A slow warmth entered it, and this time he did smile, not much, but enough to alter the whole doorway. Then I will come tomorrow, he said, and count this as the first word. He left her with the chair under the latch, and a heart that felt less settled than it had in years. By late July, Everett stopped pretending patience. He began with notices. The first appeared on painted table's gate, nailed crooked to the post. Private route, future resort property, no watering without permission. Lydia found it at dawn. She read it once, walked back to the house, took the hammer Cole had shown her how to use, and removed the nail without tearing the paper. Then she carried the notice to the kitchen stove and used it to start the breakfast fire. 2 hours later, she found a second notice on the old lane that ran toward the spring meadow. That one she left until noon, because Mrs. Bell and 3 riders were there to see her take it down. Mr. Sloan says there will be fines, one rider warned. On his land he may try. On yours. Lydia folded the notice. On mine he may learn disappointment. The riders laughed, but it was an uneasy laugh. Men with hungry families did not enjoy choosing sides against money. Everett knew that, he used it. He offered wages to every loose hand in town. He promised resort contracts to the livery. He told Packer that painted table's account was temporary and unwise. He sent Klein twice to ask for measurements, and twice Lydia sent him away with no measurements. Then he sent her trunk to the depot. Lydia discovered it because Packer's boy rode out red-faced at supper time. Miss Hart, I thought you should know. Your big brown trunk is at the depot, tagged for eastbound hold. Mr. Sloan said you wanted it ready. For a moment, Lydia could not speak. Her trunk held dresses, books, her mother's comb, and letters she had not yet had the courage to read. It was not the trunk itself that shook her. It was the ease with which Everett had moved her life in the direction he preferred. He had not touched her arm. He had not raised his voice. He had only moved a box, and somehow the whole world had been told she was already leaving. Cole was in the yard repairing the latch. He stood slowly. "I will hitch the wagon." Lydia untied her apron. "No, I will drive." "I will go with you." "Yes." She did not say because I am afraid. She did not have to. Cole heard what was beneath the word and took up his hat. At the depot, the trunk sat beside the freight door with a tag looped through the handle. "Eastbound hold." The depot agent, Mr. Voss, would not meet Lydia's eyes. Mr. Sloan said arrangements were made. Lydia untied the tag. "Did I say arrangements were made?" "No, ma'am." "Did I sign this?" "No, ma'am." "Then you will unload anything moved in my name without my word into the street next time, and you will do it while I stand here saying why." Voss flushed. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and said it loudly enough for the freight men to hear. Cole stood behind her, silent. That silence mattered. He did not rescue her from the speaking. He made it harder for others to pretend she spoke alone. Two freight men came to lift the trunk. Lydia stopped them. "No." Cole looked at her. She opened the trunk, took out one valise, her mother's comb, and the packet of letters. Then she shut it. "Send the trunk back tomorrow with the freight wagon," she told Voss. "Tomorrow?" "Yes, tonight I will carry what I need." The valise was heavier than she expected. Cole's right hand moved, then stopped. She carried it herself to the wagon. Halfway there, she stumbled. He stepped near but did not touch her until she nodded. Then he took one handle, not all the weight, only half. Together, they set it in the wagon. The depot men watched the trunk stay behind and the valise leave by Lydia's own hand. It was not victory yet, but it changed the direction of the story in the street. The depot platform had gone quiet. Lydia climbed to the seat, hands shaking now that the worst was past. Cole mounted his horse beside the wagon. "You did well," he said. "I wanted to throw the tag at Mr. Voss." "That may have been well, too." She laughed, and the laugh broke the fear cleanly enough for her to breathe. As they drove out of town, Everett stood across the street in front of the hotel. He had seen enough. He did not call to her. He only lifted his hat, a small, cold gesture that promised he was not finished. The midpoint of that summer came not with a date on the calendar, but with smoke. Before the smoke, there was a supper. Lydia had invited every neighbor who had used painted table water or work in July. She called it a repair supper because charity made people shy and work made them honest. Mrs. Bell brought onions. Packer came with coffee, pretending he had merely been passing. The Danner brothers arrived late, hats in hand, and offered to mend the springhouse roof for half wages after Everett's crew cut them loose for asking about fire lanes. Lydia looked at them a long moment. "Half wages is not enough." Joss swallowed. "Ma'am, we left you." "Yes." "We are sorry." "Sorry does not tighten wire." Will nodded, eyes down. Lydia took pity, only after making the truth stand in the open. "Full wages when I have them, supper tonight, roof tomorrow." The brothers looked up. Cole, standing near the pump, watched her with an expression that made her hands want to become still and graceful. They did not. She was holding a coffee pot and nearly poured into the sugar bowl. People ate on benches, barrels, and the porch steps. For an hour, painted table sounded like the place under the kitchen table had promised it once was. Men argued about weather. Women traded yeast. Someone fixed the barn hinge without being asked. Then Everett arrived with Klein and two strangers in city coats. The strangers were Omaha investors. Lydia knew because Everett introduced them loudly. "Gentlemen, as you see, the property still has rustic charm, though Miss Hart's generosity with local traffic will need curbing once operations begin." Conversation died. Everett smiled at Lydia, as if the supper were a childish display he had decided to tolerate. "I thought you should meet Mr. Calder and Mr. Ames. They are prepared to support a first-class summer resort stop if the property is managed correctly. Lydia set down the coffee pot. Painted table is not being inspected tonight. Mr. Calder looked uncomfortable. Mr. Ames looked at the benches, the patched porch, the riders by the pump, and seemed to calculate whether rustic charm smelled too much like beans. Everett lowered his voice. Do not embarrass yourself. Cole heard, so did Mrs. Bell, so did half the yard. Lydia felt the old sting of being corrected in public. It would have been easy to soften, to invite the men inside, to protect everyone from discomfort except herself. Instead, she turned to the investors. Gentlemen, you are welcome to supper if you are hungry. You are not welcome to measure my house while people who helped keep it standing are eating at my table. Mr. Calder removed his hat. Supper smells fine, Miss Hart. Everett's face tightened. Mr. Ames did not remove his hat. Sloan said sale was practically done. Mr. Sloan says many practical things. Someone coughed to hide a laugh. Everett's eyes sharpened. Lydia, enough. Cole stepped away from the pump, but Lydia lifted one hand. He stopped. She looked at Everett. No, enough is when I say it. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Mrs. Bell stood, took an empty plate, filled it with beans, and handed it to Mr. Calder. If you are eating, sit. If you are measuring, leave. That broke the yard into motion again. A few men laughed. Mr. Calder sat. Mr. Ames remained standing, offended. Everett's smile had gone flat. He leaned close enough that only Lydia and Cole could hear. You think this makes you beloved? It makes you foolish. When money leaves, affection will not roof your barn. Lydia's mouth went dry. Cole's voice came from behind her, low. No, but men will. Everett turned on him. For wages. For respect first. You cannot afford respect, Wren. I have found it cheaper than contempt. The yard went quiet again. Mr. Calder set down his fork. Everett seemed to remember he had witnesses. He smoothed his coat. Enjoy your supper, he said. By August, sentiment will have spent itself. He left with Klein and Mr. Ames. Mr. Calder hesitated, then rose. Thank you for the beans, Miss Hart. Everett called his name from the road. Mr. Calder looked embarrassed, then followed. After they were gone, the supper did not recover fully. People had seen the shape of the fight now. They knew every biscuit eaten at Painted Table might be counted against them by a man with wages to offer. That was Everett's gift for spoiling rooms. He did not need to overturn a table. He only had to make honest people wonder whether kindness would cost them winter work. Lydia cleared plates with steady hands. Cole came to the pump beside her. You are tired. Do not say I did well. I was going to say you scared Ames. That surprised a smile from her. He took the plate stack from her hands only after she let him. Midnight coffee, he asked. That sounds improper. On the porch, door open. Mrs. Bell is still in the kitchen and has the hearing of a church bell. Lydia glanced toward the kitchen, where Mrs. Bell was pretending not to listen. Then yes. Later the ranch settled. The last riders left. Mrs. Bell slept in Aunt Me's old room because the road was too dark. Lydia and Cole sat at opposite ends of the porch bench with coffee cooling between them. The ridge was black against a sky thick with stars. I should sell, Lydia said. Cole did not answer. That is the sensible thing. The house needs money. The fence needs men. The spring house roof may fall. My uncle's debts are real. Everett is wrong about me, but he is not wrong about cost. No. You agree. Cost is real. She looked at him. That was carefully said. I am trying not to turn wanting into counsel. There it was again, that careful room he made around her choice. The quiet almost hurt. Do you want me to stay? She asked. Cole's hand tightened around his cup. His bad hand lay open on his knee. Yes. The answer came plain, without defense. Lydia's breath caught. He looked out toward the ridge. I want you to stay so much, I do not trust myself to speak of it. Cole, but if you stay because I want it, you will hate this place the first winter it takes more than it gives. If you leave because Sloan pushes you, you will hate the train before it reaches Cheyenne. So I am asking the Lord for sense and mostly keeping my mouth shut." She looked down at her coffee. The surface trembled because her hand did. "What if I do not know what I want?" "Then do not let a man in a gray suit decide while you are thinking." She laughed softly, then pressed her fingers against her eyes. "You make it sound simple." "It is not simple, it is yours." For a while they watched the stars. Then Cole pointed toward the ridge. "Lightning weather coming." "There is no cloud." "Not yet." "You can feel it." "In my hand." She looked at the scarred hand in the starlight. "Does it always warn you?" "Only when I wish it would keep quiet." He flexed it once slowly. Lydia wanted to take that hand. She did not. He had spent weeks teaching her that restraint could be a form of tenderness, and now she had to honor it too. "If lightning comes," she said, "what do we do?" "Keep water barrels full, clear brush from the house, make sure the south fence can open fast." "And Everett's road." Cole's face hardened. "Pray he has more sense than pride." Everett did not. The first smoke showed 3 days later, thin as a pencil mark above the west ridge. Lydia saw it from the springhouse roof, where she was holding shingles while Joss Danner nailed. At first she thought it was dust. Then the line darkened, lifted, and spread. Cole had taught her not to wait. She climbed down so fast Joss swore and grabbed for her elbow. "Bell," she said, "ring the bell." "Ma'am." "The ranch bell now." The old iron bell hung beside the barn, cracked at one edge but loud enough to wake the road. Joss ran. Lydia lifted her skirt and ran for the pump. By the time the bell gave its first hard clang, she had filling barrels. Mrs. Bell came out of the kitchen with her apron full of towels. "Wet every cloth," Lydia said. "Lay them over the porch rail, bring shovels." "Where is it?" "West Ridge." Mrs. Bell looked, saw the smoke, and crossed herself. Cole rode in at a gallop before the 5th bell strike. He took in the yard, the barrels, the men, Lydia at the pump. "Good," he said, "keep going." He did not take command from her. He joined the command she had already begun. That steadied everyone more than shouting would have. More riders came. The Danner brothers hitched the wagon to haul water. Packer arrived with coffee sacks for beating sparks. 2 rocking hands brought shovels. The wind shifted once, twice, then came hard from the west. The smoke thickened. Cole rode to the ridge and returned with ash on his sleeve. "It jumped the draw. We need the old lane open." Lydia looked toward Everett's resort road. "Then open it." "It is chained." The yard stilled. "By Everett." Cole nodded. Lydia grabbed the fence pliers. "Then we use mine." The south fence was not meant to open wide. They had repaired it too well. Lydia ran there with Cole, Joss, Will, and half the yard behind her. Smoke rolled low now, dirtying the sun. Horses began to toss their heads. Cattle bawled from beyond the creek. At the fence, Lydia set the pliers to the first wire. Cole caught her wrist. "Cut there and it will whip." "Then show me." He did, fast, no wasted words. She braced the wire with a post, cut low, then high, then twisted the strand back until it opened a gap wide enough for horses. The first loose stock came through wild-eyed, driven by riders from the west. Lydia stood at the gap and waved them toward the green meadow near the spring. "There, keep them low." Mrs. Bell opened the pump lane. "We'll wet the sacks." Joss, take men to the barn roof. No one asked who had put her in charge. The fire did. It came over the ridge in a low red crawl at first, then lifted where brush caught. Heat pushed ahead of it. Ash fell in Lydia's hair. Somewhere behind the smoke, men shouted at Everett's road. Then a wagon came racing down from the resort lane, carrying 3 guests in summer coats and a driver with fear-white eyes. "Gates locked," the driver shouted. "Sloan says no stock through the resort road, says they'll ruin the grade." Cole swore under his breath. Lydia's fear went cold. "Bring them here," she called, "all of them." The driver stared. "Stock too." "People first, then stock, then wagons. If it breathes, it comes through." The driver turned his team. Everett arrived 10 minutes later on a sweating horse, Klein behind him and 2 hired men trying to keep up. His face was streaked with dust, his fine coat buttoned wrong. "What have you done?" he shouted. Lydia was dragging wet sacks toward the barn. "Opened my fence." "You cut sale property." "I cut my fence." "You are letting range stock trample the meadow." "I am letting living creatures out of fire." He rode closer, eyes bright with fury and fear. "Close that gap." Men heard him, women heard him. The Omaha guests heard him from the wagon where Mrs. Bell was handing them wet cloths. Lydia stood with smoke blowing behind her. "No." Everett pointed at Cole. "Wren, close it. I will see your lease ended if you do not." Cole looked at Lydia. She knew what the threat cost him. Work, standing, winter security. Maybe the place he had built himself back into after the fire that scarred him. He swung down from his horse, took a shovel and walked to Lydia's side. "No," he said. Everett's face darkened. He turned to his hired men. "Close that fence, now." The 2 men looked at the smoke, the animals, the women at the pump, the guests coughing in the wagon, and Lydia standing with the wet sack in her burned red hands. Neither moved. "I pay you," Everett snapped. One of them, a broad fellow Lydia had seen hauling lumber, took off his hat. "You paid for road work, Mr. Sloan, not for burning folks out." The other nodded once and went to help Will with the water barrels. Everett's mouth opened. His order had failed in front of the very men he had paid to make Lydia feel alone. Before he could speak, Mr. Calder, the investor who had eaten beans, stepped down from the wagon. "Sloan," he said, coughing hard, "you locked the only graded lane." "To protect company property." "My wife was in that wagon." Everett looked past him. A pale woman in a travel hat sat wrapped in a wet quilt, staring at him with open disgust. Mr. Calder's voice turned flat. "Our company is done here." "Calder, do not be rash." Rash was locking a gate in a grassfire. The words traveled through the yard with more force than any formal judgment could have carried. Everett wheeled toward Lydia. "You think this is victory? Your hay is burning, your fence is down, your springhouse roof is half gone. Without my offer, this place will bury you." The south haystack caught then with a sound like a giant drawing breath. Flame climbed, bright and hungry. For one terrible second, Lydia saw the truth in what he said. The ranch was being damaged before her eyes. Her summer work could vanish in an hour. Wanting was not enough. Cole took one step toward the hay. Lydia caught his sleeve. "No, the barn first." He looked at the hay, then at her. That was the moment the story changed. Not because he saved her. Because he obeyed her. "Barn first," Cole shouted. "Leave the stack water lined to the roof." Men moved, women moved. The resort guests moved too, passing buckets in a line from the pump. Packer beat Sparks from the porch with wet coffee sacks. Mrs. Bell hauled children from the road wagon into the kitchen, not as emotional proof, only as people needing air. Joss and Will climbed the barn ladder. Cole took the team to drag burning brush away from the wall, his bad hand wrapped tight around the rein. Lydia stood where everyone could see her, and kept giving orders until her voice went raw. "More water to the roof. Open the meadow gate wider. Keep the horses moving. Do not chase that cow, let her find low ground." Mrs. Bell, coffee sacks to the porch. "Mr. Packer, if you can argue about sugar prices, you can shout louder than that." Men laughed through smoke because she made them. The fire reached the lower brush and split around the green meadow. Flame took the hay stack, licked the edge of the springhouse roof, and blackened a line of fence posts. But the barn held. The house held. The animals crowded into the wet low ground, trembling but alive. At dusk, the wind dropped. The fire did not die all at once. It sank, guttered, found small things to eat, and was beaten down by tired people who no longer cared whether their clothes, hats, or hands were ruined. When the last bright line near the creek went black, no one cheered. They stood breathing smoke and looking at what had been saved. Cole came to Lydia with ash in his beard and one sleeve scorched through. His left hand was shaking badly. "Are you hurt?" "No," she said. It was almost true. He looked at her face, then at the yard full of people waiting for her next word. Everett was still there, near his horse. Klein stood beside him, useless as a folded umbrella. Mr. Calder and his wife had moved to the porch. The hired resort men were at the pump, washing soot from their arms. Lydia walked to Everett. Every conversation stopped. He straightened, trying to gather dignity from a coat smeared with ash. "This changes nothing," he said. It was the last defense of a man who knew everything had changed. Lydia's voice was hoarse, but it carried. "It changes the sale. You cannot maintain this place. Not alone. These people will go home." Mrs. Bell stepped off the porch. "After breakfast." Packer cleared his throat. "And after I bring roof tin from town, charged proper." Joss Danner lifted one burned hat. "Danners will rebuild the fence for wages owed after haying." Mr. Calder looked at Everett. "And my party will pay Miss Hart for lodging tonight, since her open gate saved my wife while yours trapped her." Everett's face lost color. Lydia did not look away from him. "You will remove your notices from my road. You will not move my trunk, speak for my hand, threaten Mr. Wren's lease, or send men to measure my rooms. You will send my uncle a true account. I refused the sale." "Your uncle owes money." "Then my uncle may write to me." "You are making a childish mistake." Cole shifted, but Lydia did not need him to answer that. "No," she said. "A childish woman lets others name her mistakes before she makes them. I am making an adult choice." Everett looked around for support. No one gave it. Not Klein. Not the hired men. Not the investors. Not the storekeeper who had once refused her account. That was Everett's visible loss, and everyone saw it happen. His command had nowhere to land. Mr. Calder spoke again. "Sloan, our carriage leaves at first light. We will not finance a resort run by a man who locks gates in fire." Everett turned on him. "You will regret haste." "I already regret delay." Mrs. Calder, still wrapped in Lydia's wet quilt, looked at her husband and said clearly, "Put that in your letter to Omaha." The second investor, Mr. Ames, had not come to the fire line. He had stayed at the hotel. That no longer mattered. One man's wife had sat wrapped in Lydia's quilt while Everett defended lumber grade. The story would reach Omaha faster than any prospectus. Everett climbed onto his horse. For a moment, Lydia thought he might try to leave with the last word. Cole stepped forward. "One more thing." Everett glared down at him. Cole held up the folded resort notice Lydia had taken from the gate and saved. "You posted this on her land. Keep it as a souvenir." "No," Cole handed it to Klein. "You will pull the rest tonight, in front of men who saw where they were nailed. If one is left by morning, I ride to every outfit between here and Laramie and tell them which gates Sloan locks when smoke rises." Klein took the paper with shaking fingers. Everett laughed once, bitter and small. "You overestimate your importance." Cole's face was calm. "Maybe, but tonight I saw a valley follow her. I know exactly how important that is." Lydia could not look at him then. If she did, she might forget the yard was full of people. Everett rode out with Klein behind him. This time, his leaving was not a threat. It was a retreat. The night after the fire was the longest night Lydia had ever known. People slept where they could. Mrs. Bell and Mrs. Calder took the kitchen floor with two other women. Men rolled in blankets by the barn and pump. Cole stayed outside with the horses, refusing the chair Lydia offered until she said Aunt Mee would scold him for making a hostess waste breath. Even then he took the porch step, not the chair. Around midnight, Lydia brought him coffee. The yard smelled of wet ash and trampled grass. The hay stack was a black mound under a watch of two men with shovels. Sparks glowed now and then vanished. Cole accepted the cup. You should sleep. So should you. I am sitting, that is kin to sleep. She sat beside him on the step, leaving a careful distance. For a while they listened to the soft breathing of exhausted people. Your lease, she said, may suffer because of me. He turned his head. We discussed that. Because of him, she corrected. Better. But you may still pay. Yes. His honesty hurt. She had wanted comfort, but he gave her truth because he respected her enough not to wrap it in falsehood. I am sorry. I am not. Cole. Lydia, 5 years ago I rode into this yard thinking my hand had ended the only life I knew. Your aunt put beans in front of me and told me work changes shape before it leaves a man. I did not believe her. Tonight I did. She looked at his burned sleeve, his shaking hand, his tired face. What shape is it now? He looked toward the sleeping yard. Whatever shape keeps gates open. Lydia's throat tightened. That sounds like something Aunt Me would have carved under the table. She would have made me fix the step first. They both looked down. The step had cracked under the day's traffic. Lydia laughed softly. Then, without quite deciding to, she laid her hand palm up on the board between them. Cole looked at it. She did not move it closer. After a moment, he set his right hand over hers. No more, no claim. No promise spoken in the dark when smoke and danger could make any feeling seem larger than it was. Only his hand, warm and calloused, holding hers where the whole sleeping yard could have seen if anyone had opened their eyes. When the stage leaves in September, he said, I will not stand in front of it. I know. I may hate every wheel on it. I know that too. But I will not stand in front of it. She turned her hand slightly, enough to hold his. Then if I stay, you will know it was not because you blocked the road. His breath left him slowly. Yes. They sat that way until the coffee cooled. The next morning brought consequence. Not the soft, kind people speak of after danger when everybody is grateful and no bill has arrived. Real consequence. The south hay was gone. 5 fence posts had burned through. The springhouse roof sagged at one corner. 2 of Everett's guests needed lodging until a wagon could take them to town. The meadow was trampled into mud. Lydia's flour was nearly spent because she fed 30 people breakfast. But Painted Table was full of people who no longer looked at her as a summer visitor. They looked to her. That was heavier. Packer came after breakfast with his hat in his hand and soot still on his shirt. Miss Hart, I was wrong about the account. Lydia was too tired for ceremony. Yes. He swallowed. I will extend proper credit for roof tin and staples, not charity, account. In whose name? He met her eyes. Yours. Then I accept. The Danner brothers came next. We want to finish the fence, Joss said. For wages, Lydia said. Yes, ma'am. Full day recorded, no half wages for guilt. Will nodded, yes, ma'am. Mrs. Bell brought Mr. Calder and his wife to the porch. Mrs. Calder's eyes were red from smoke, but her back was straight. Miss Hart, she said, my husband and I owe you more than lodging. You owe me 2 breakfasts and 1 quilt washing. Mrs. Calder smiled faintly. Then we will start there. Mr. Calder held his hat in both hands. Our company will not proceed with Mr. Sloane. I cannot speak for what he may try elsewhere, but not with us. Lydia nodded. Thank you for telling me. There is more. If you choose to keep this as a road house, not a resort, there may be honest custom, not grand, but steady. Drivers, riders, small parties, people who need an open gate more than velvet chairs. Lydia glanced toward the kitchen, the porch, the carved table inside. A living place, she said. Cole, standing near the barn, heard. His eyes found hers. Mr. Calder did not know the meaning in the words. He only nodded. Yes, a living place. By noon, the resort notices were gone. Klein pulled them himself, watched by Joss, Will, Packer's boy, and two rocking M hands who had come for water and stayed to witness. Everett did not appear. By evening, word reached the ranch that he had left town in a hired carriage, taking the east road rather than past Painted Table. He left behind unpaid board at the hotel, a stack of useless resort lumber, a canceled Omaha promise, and a story he could no longer control. That might have been enough for a different life. For Lydia, it was only the beginning of choice. August came hot and hard. The first week was repair, the second was debt, the third was doubt. The ranch did not become easy because Lydia had made one brave stand. The pump broke again. Packer's credit helped, but credit was not coin. The Danner brothers needed wages before winter. Everett wrote once, a cold letter saying she had humiliated him and would regret rejecting a respectable future. Her uncle wrote twice, one letter pleading illness and debt, another accusing her of being ungrateful. Lydia read both under the cottonwoods and cried where no one saw. Then she washed her face and went back to work. Cole did not press courtship. He came, worked, ate when invited, left before talk could turn soft in front of tired people. That restraint, once comforting, began to ache. One evening, after a day spent hauling tin to the springhouse roof, Lydia found him saddling in the yard. "You are leaving early. Rocking M needs me before dawn. Has your lease suffered?" He tightened the cinch. "My boss got a letter. From Everett. From men who know him." Lydia's stomach dropped. "What did it say?" "That I am troublesome." "And what did your boss say?" "That he knew that when he hired me." She tried to smile. "That is good." "It is not bad." "Cole." He stopped fussing with the cinch. "He cut my winter line camp preference, gave it to a man with two good hands and no enemies." The words struck harder because he said them plainly. "That was your best post." "Warmest." "Because of me." He turned then, and the look in his eyes stopped her before she could correct herself. "Lydia." "Because of him," she whispered. "Yes." She swallowed, "But you pay. Sometimes people pay for things worth buying." "And what did you buy?" He looked at Painted Table, at the repaired porch, the open pump lane, the patched roof catching sunset. "The right to sleep with myself." She closed her eyes. "I cannot bear that you lose and call it clean." "I did not call it painless." That opened the truth between them. He had been hurt, he had hidden how much. He had not used it to purchase her. Lydia stepped closer. "What can I do?" "Keep choosing for yourself. That helps you more than you know." She wanted to take his face in her hands. She wanted to ask him to stop being noble long enough to say something selfish. Instead, she said, "Will you come to supper Sunday?" He studied her. "As a neighbor." "No." The word trembled, but it stood. "As what?" "As a man I am not ready to leave unnamed." Cole's breath caught. For once, he seemed to have no careful answer. "Sunday," he said. That was all. It was enough to carry her through 3 more days. If this kind of slow-burn cowboy romance is the trail you like, subscribe so the next Wild West love story can find you too. On Sunday, Everett's last move arrived. Not Everett himself. A telegram forwarded through the town office addressed to Lydia. It read, "Return passage still held through September 1st. If you miss it, do not expect family funds or protection. Uncle ADVISES immediate return." It was signed ESLOANE. Under it, in smaller writing, the telegraph clerk had added, "Stage East leaves Monday morning." Lydia stood in the depot with the paper in her hand. The old reflex rose again, obey before the door closes. Return before love becomes foolish. Choose the known disappointment over the unknown cost. Cole was not with her, that mattered. She had gone to town alone to fetch coffee and mail. No one stood at her shoulder. Mr. Voss, the depot agent, watched her carefully. "You want me to hold baggage, Miss Hart?" Lydia looked toward the freight door where her trunk had once sat tagged without her word. "No." You want to send a wire? She looked at the telegram again. Family funds or protection. She thought of Everett locking the gate. She thought of Cole saying he would not stand in front of the stage. She thought of Aunt Me's carved table, Mrs. Bell's onions, Packer's account, the Danners on the fence, Mr. Calder's phrase, honest custom. Then she thought of herself, not as a woman rescued by Wyoming, not as a woman chosen by a cowboy, but as the woman who had cut her own fence open while smoke rolled down the ridge. Yes, she said, I want to send a wire. Voss took up his pencil. Lydia dictated slowly. To Everett Sloane. Passage not needed. Announcement refused. Do not write as family or protector. Lydia Hart, Painted Table Ranch. Voss looked up once at protector, but he wrote it. Send one to my uncle too, Lydia said. To Uncle Abel, I will discuss debt directly by letter. I will not marry to settle it. Painted table remains mine, Lydia. The clerk's pencil paused. That all? Lydia folded Everett's telegram. That is enough. When she returned to Painted Table, Cole was there for Sunday supper, standing by the porch in a clean shirt, holding his hat like a man facing judgment. He looked so solemn she nearly laughed, then she saw the fear under it. He knew the stage left the next morning. He knew she had gone to town. He did not ask what she had done. At supper, Mrs. Bell talked more than usual. The Danners ate as if chewing could save them from awkwardness. Packer pretended intense interest in the repaired stove. Cole answered when spoken to and looked at Lydia only when he thought she would not see. After the meal, Lydia walked him to the gate. The sunset lay red over the burned ridge. New grass had not come yet. The scars of fire were everywhere. The stage leaves in the morning, she said. Yes. Will you be there? His hand tightened on his hat. Do you want me there? Yes. Pain crossed his face before he mastered it. Then I will be there. At a distance. His mouth curved, but his eyes did not. Likely. Not in front of it. Never. She stepped closer. Good. He looked uncertain now. She took Everett's folded telegram from her pocket and held it out. Cole did not take it. Is that for me? No, I already answered it. I only wanted you to see the paper that failed. He looked at the telegram, then at her face, and understood slowly. You are not leaving tomorrow. I am going to the stage. His hope checked itself, disciplined even now. To do what? To make sure it can leave without me. For a moment, Cole Wren looked as if the whole summer had struck him, and he had not yet learned whether it was wound or blessing. Lydia, do not ask yet. He closed his mouth. I need to choose it in daylight, she said, with the road open, with you not stopping me, with everyone knowing I could go. He nodded once, though it cost him. Then I will stand where you tell me. Stand where you can see me. I can do that. She wanted to say more. She wanted to tell him every feeling she had held back out of fear, pride, and the strange tenderness of being respected. But tomorrow mattered. The road mattered. The stage mattered. So she only said, wear the clean shirt. His surprised laugh was quiet and unguarded. Yes, ma'am. That night Lydia packed one valise. Not because she meant to leave, because choice without the ability to leave was only another pretty cage. She packed her mother's comb, 2 dresses, Everett's telegram, and the letters from her aunt she had finally read. Aunt Me had written them during lonely winters and never sent them, perhaps because pride was easier than postage. They were full of ordinary things: a calf born in snow, a roof leak, a neighbor's baby, the way sunset made the tableland look painted red. In the last letter, Aunt Me had written, if Lydia ever comes, do not let her think the place needs saving before it can save her back. Lydia folded that letter and put it in her pocket instead of the valise. At dawn, she dressed plainly, braided her hair, and carried the valise to the wagon. Mrs. Bell stood at the kitchen door. You want breakfast first? When I come back. The older woman nodded as if that settled the matter, but her eyes shone. Packer arrived with the coffee delivery and pretended he had not come to see. The Danners found reasons to mend the gate hinges. Two rocking hands rode by very slowly. Cole waited on horseback at the road fork, wearing the clean shirt. He did not ride beside the wagon. He followed far enough back that no one could say he had escorted her into a decision. The stage stood before the depot with its team stamping and the driver checking straps. Mr. Voss came out when he saw Lydia. "Morning, Miss Hart." "Morning. You traveling?" She set the valise on the platform. Cole reined in across the street, exactly where he could see and not interfere. Lydia looked at the stage door. She imagined climbing in. She imagined the dust closing behind Wyoming. She imagined St. Louis rooms, Everett's silence turned cold, her uncle's relief, the respectable life waiting like a dress cut for someone else's body. The driver lifted a trunk into the boot. "Ma'am." Lydia touched the handle of the valise. Then she picked it up again. "No." Mr. Voss's face softened. "Sending baggage." "No." "Message." Lydia looked across the street at Cole. Every careful wall in him was holding, but barely. "No message." The stage driver shut the boot. "Stand clear." The whip cracked in the air, not on the horses. The team leaned. Wheels turned, dust rose. The eastbound stage left Medicine Bow crossing with Lydia Hart standing on the platform, holding her own valise. No one cheered. That would have made it a performance. Instead, Mr. Voss took off his hat. The blacksmith's wife, watching from across the street, wiped her eyes with her apron. Packer's boy grinned so wide his ears seemed involved. Cole remained still until the stage passed the bend. Only then did Lydia cross the street. He dismounted before she reached him. For once, he did not seem to know where to put his hands. "The road was open," she said. His voice was rough. "Yes. You did not stand in front of it." "No. I did not get in. I saw." She smiled, and tears came with it. "Cole Wren, I am staying at Painted Table because I want the work, and the wind, and the open gate, and the trouble of it. I am staying because Aunt Me left me a living place, and because I left a life that had no room for my voice. I am not staying because you asked." He swallowed. "I have not asked." "No. May I?" She laughed then, crying openly. "Not here." His face fell so quickly she reached for his sleeve. "I mean not in the road, with Voss pretending not to listen." Across the street, Mr. Voss suddenly found the depot window fascinating. Cole's breath broke into a laugh. "Where then?" "Painted Table." "Your porch." "My porch." He looked at the valise in her hand. "May I carry that?" She considered. "Half." He took one handle, she kept the other. They walked to the wagon that way, carrying the weight between them. September 1st arrived bright, cool, and wind-washed. The last official day of Lydia's summer began before dawn, with coffee boiling, biscuits browning, and 3 wagons already standing in the Painted Table yard. Word had traveled after the fire, not the grand version Everett would have told with himself at the center. The useful version: Painted Table had water, Painted Table had supper for pay or work, Painted Table's owner kept the gate open when smoke rose, Painted Table needed roof tin, fence labor, hay, and honest custom. By sunrise, Mrs. Bell was slicing bacon. Joss and Will were arguing over post holes. Packer unloaded coffee and wrote the charge in Lydia's account without being asked whose name belonged on it. Mr. Calder had sent a note promising 2 small parties in October, no velvet chairs required. Lydia moved through the kitchen in Aunt Me's blue apron, giving orders that no longer surprised anyone. "Joss, eat before you dig." "Mr. Packer, coffee by the stove." "Mrs. Bell, if Will steals another biscuit, charge him twice." "Will, I saw that." Laughter moved around the room. Cole arrived after the first plates were filled. He had ridden from Rockingham in the dark, and his hair was still damp from washing. He stopped at the kitchen door, not crossing until Lydia looked up. Their eyes met. The room did not vanish. That was the wonder of it. The room stayed. Bacon, coffee, tired men, Mrs. Bell's sharp elbows, burned ridge beyond the window. Love did not carry Lydia away from her life. It stood inside it, waiting to be invited properly. "Morning," Cole said. "Morning." Mrs. Bell muttered, "If you two plan to speak one word at a time all winter, I will charge admission." The Danners laughed. Cole's ears reddened. Lydia turned toward the stove so no one would see her smile too widely. After breakfast, when the men went out to the fence line and Mrs. Bell busied herself with dishes very loudly, Cole stayed on the porch. Lydia came out wiping her hands on the apron. The east road lay pale in the morning light. Far off, the stage horn sounded. The stage would pass the fork without stopping unless flagged. Cole heard it too. "Last summer stage," he said. "Yes. Do you want to watch it?" "I am watching." The stage appeared as a small dark shape beyond the cottonwoods, rolled along the road and kept going. No trunk waited at the gate. No valise sat on the porch. No man stood with a ticket. No announcement held her name hostage. The wheels passed the fork. The dust lifted. The road emptied. Lydia let out a breath she felt she had been holding since St. Louis. Cole took off his hat. "Lydia Hart, now that the road is open and the stage is gone, may I ask to court you?" She looked at him, this quiet cowboy who had changed everything by refusing to take what was not freely given. "You may. Will you let me?" "Yes." His smile came slowly, like sunrise over land that had survived fire. He held out his hand palm up, not pulling, not claiming, asking. Lydia placed her hand in his. Behind them, Mrs. Bell clattered a pan and pretended it was an accident. Lydia laughed, Cole did too. The sound carried into the yard, where men were setting new posts in the burned south line and wagons waited for coffee before taking the road. The last summer stage rolled farther east without her. Painted Table's door stood open behind her. Ahead, the morning filled with work, smoke from the stove, and the first cool breath of autumn. And Lydia stayed, not because the cowboy blocked the road, but because he had helped her find the place where her own road began. For more clean frontier romance and Wild West stories about courage, home, and chosen love, subscribe before you ride on to the next tale.